Alrighty then, so we are back. This can't be. Okay.
Mr. Doey.
Yeah.
So I'm doing, is it fine if I ask a question right now, or are you getting into something?
It's okay to ask the question. I haven't started, so yeah.
I'm trying to do P212, and I'm watching the video, and Mr. Anderson has a lot of layers, and
Extra
he didn't.
stuff and all that stuff that you don't need. Yes, I know. And
Do we make the lines ourselves, or do we need to make the lines or the layer properties? Or
no, no, you don't need to do layers. You don't need to do line types. It's a bunch of extra stuff. That's what I was talking about mentioning earlier, that, you're not there. You don't have those tools yet, so don't worry about it. So no, you don't have to draw that. You just need to draw the shape. That's it.
okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. Okay, so as I mentioned, 2-11, 2-12, they may have extra stuff on them that you guys don't need, and that's okay. You don't have to draw them in. Just draw a line. You don't have to draw a center line or a hidden line or whatever line. Just a regular line is fine. You don't have to set up layers. Don't worry about any of that. All right. So that's a good question. And hopefully that makes sense to you. No, we don't have to get that big. No. And I know why I did it, because it's just for him, that's kind of OCD kind of thing. And well, it's a center line. You need to draw a center line. Well, yeah, just because you know how to do one doesn't mean you know how to draw. Because we know how to draw one doesn't mean you know how to draw one. There we go. Love the man, but it's okay. Moving along. Sorry. You know how it is. Lunch, and then then you can't talk. All right. All right. So we've talked about coordinates, and so now we want to get into the commands. They're pretty straightforward. Remember, anytime you type in something, what do you need to do next? Enter. Good job. You listen. Not that y'all did. Anyway. So, enter. Anytime you put a number in, enter. Anytime you put in a letter for a shortcut, for a command, enter. What other key can you use besides the enter keys? You can use the space bar. I dare you to use the space bar. It's actually pretty handy, because if you've got one hand by the keyboard, one hand on the mouse, you can actually, you can get in a flow where you're just sitting there and drawing and zipping out stuff. Or at least you'll get to that point. Now I'm going to sit down because it hurts my arm if I stand up. And so anyway, and we're going to do some mousing and keyboarding and learn some commands. All right, so we're going to start with the draw commands, and I'm going to try to get to the modify ones, and we'll kind of go from there. Now, in the book, whatever I did with the book, like I said, we started on, what was it, 2-5 or something? Yeah, we started on 2-5, and it talks about the different areas, AutoCAD commands, the ribbons, we went through that, access toolbar, Goofy Wizard, start things up, and so on. Zoom in, Canon. We haven't really talked about that yet, but we will. We talked about coordinates. So there's the coordinates there on 230 and 29 and 31. All right. UCS, we're going to skip that because we don't care. All right. So using coordinates. So on pages 238, 239. So we've already drawn some lines. So here's the thing. If you want to get rid of stuff, there is an erase command, but you can just highlight things, and you'll notice that I just just, highlighted something. I picked, and then I pulled over to the left. I created a green window. That's called a crossing window. Excuse me. Some commands require you to use a specific window in selecting things, and some things don't. As far as I know, stretch is the only one that requires you to use a crossing window, and I'll explain why when we get there. But a crossing window goes from right to left. A regular selection window goes from left to right, and it's blue. So if I do a blue window, I have to go all the way around whatever it is I want to pick. If I go to the right and I just highlight parts of it, it will select whatever I've either enclosed or gone over part of. And then, like I said, I can hit delete. If you hold down your left mouse button, then you get this lasso thing that I don't really understand how to use. And used to, it didn't do that. So if you want to select something with a window, you have to pick with your left button, let go, drag left or right to get whichever one you want, which I typically go to the left and do a crossing window because I like that one. I don't know why. But there are times when you don't want to use it. You want to use a regular window, and that's okay too. So you have to think about it. Maybe there's a specific reason you need to use one or the other. Okay. Now, like I said, escape gets us out of where we're at, but if you're in the middle of a command and you want to finish it, you always hit enter. Okay, so commands, line, specify first point. So typically, unless I have a absolute point in space that I want to use, like 0, 0, I'm just going to pick a spot in space and draw. Now remember, if you set polar on, like I have mine on 15 degrees, so every 15 degrees, this is 30 degrees. Now, I don't have to put in a relative coordinate. I can teach you how to draw without using relative coordinates, but you have to understand what coordinates are, because there's times when a polar coordinate is the only way you're going to get what you want. And I'll explain. So, I can just draw a line. Pick a point or set a point and then hit enter or pick, and it will, if you type in the information for the point and hit enter, it'll start at that point, or you pick and it'll start at that point. Well, then I can type in a distance that I want it to go. Let's say I wanted it to be 15. And then if I have a specific angle, I can hit tab. And then it will go over to the angle spot. So let's say I wanted it at 32. There's a 15 at 32 degrees. And then let's say the next one was, I don't know, let's say it was vertical. So I could just point it to where it locks at 90 degrees. And let's say it was 10. That way. Oops. Got it. Hold on. Now what happens if you accidentally hit the wrong button or you draw something and it's not right? Do you have to start all over? No, you don't, actually. All you have to do, don't hit escape though. If you hit U enter or U spacebar, you can undo a space backwards. And see, now I'm back at my spot again. And let's say I wanted to go over to the right, the left. But they gave me an angle of it's 50 degrees off the vertical. Or 30 degrees off of vertical. Well, let's say 40 so that I can't draw it with my polar. Because see, if it was, then I'd just say, well, that's 90. And then I need to go 30 past that or 60 past it. So then there's 30. And then, oh, look, there's 60 past that. That's 150 degrees. Because if I'm measuring from vertical, I still have to take into consideration the 0 to 90, right? Because that's where I have to figure that out for AutoCAD. So if I was drawing it, typing in a polar coordinate, then that's what I'd have to do. I'd have to type in whatever my distance is, the angle symbol, and then the angle would be at 150. Because in space, that's where it would be. So that's what that says. That says 150 degrees. It says polar, 6 point, whatever. So I can make that, let's say that was supposed to be 8. And then it's 8. And then the angle would be 150 degrees. And then if I hit enter, now it's 8 at 150 degrees. So how would I draw that if I needed to draw a line that was at that angle? Well, instead of using this easy little tool, if you needed to know what the polar angle is, what you have to do would be, you do at, and your distance. So let's say the distance was 6. And then I would do shift angle. And then, like I said, it's 90 plus 60, which gives you 150. And so 150 degrees. And there's that angle. Like that. Now, that's a polar angle. So that's how you can use the line command. Polylines are basically lines that are connected, and if I hit C for close, then it makes it a better polygon, if you will. A polyline is all connected. The line command makes separate lines. So this is how you would do something that you want all connected. And the reason for the last one, normally I don't do that. I don't use the close command. But the thing with a polyline is you have to keep going or it messes up anyway. So the reason that I do the close on this is because if I were to go in and edit this and change the thickness of it, which later on we can with p-edit, then if I don't close it, then it has a weird looking corner on it, basically. And so that's why. See, otherwise, if I were to just do a line command, and I pick, and then if I wanted to, I could hit C, enter, close it. But that's only because I'm continually drawing. Now, if you were to go back into line, and you started drawing, and then you had to stop for some reason. Oh, wait a minute, I want to go back in. And I just hit enter to go back into it, or the space bar. And then I could start drawing again. But then if I hit C for close, it doesn't know that I started here. It'll go back to where I just started from. So if I hit C close, it's like, you can't do that. So then it's like, oh, well, hold on. So then I would actually have to pick. So that's one of the reasons that I don't use the close command. Now, like I said, on polyline, close is a good thing to do because if you were to go in and edit it, so to edit a polyline, use what we call p-edit. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you an editing command while we're at it. So maybe we'll just kind of show you the draw and the edit at the same time. So p-edit, or polyline edit, you select the polyline you want to edit, and then what if you wanted to go with the width? Change the width. Okay, well, let's change the width to 0.1. And see it, and then I'll hit enter to finish it out. See it change the thickness of it. Why would I want to do that? I would do that so that I could, emphasize something to make it look bigger. All right, so here's something else you can do with a polyline without editing it. So what if you go to polyline and you pick a starting point? Well, then you have an option down here to go to width. Now, something I didn't do before lunch was I did not show you how to get the command line to look like mine. Yours is just a little line down there, and you're like, dude, how come mine doesn't look like yours? Well, I will show you just in a second how that works. So anyway, for right now, I'm in the polyline command, and I click on width. So let's say I want the starting width to be 0. And then I want the ending width, and it's telling me down in the, if I look down in my command line, it's telling me what it's doing. And let's say I wanted that one to be point, I don't know, 06. All right, now, zoom up real good, and you can see that I can make an arrowhead. So a standard arrowhead is 1/8 inch long, and it should be 1/3 of that tall. Well, 0.125, I should have made it 0.04. So I can go back and fix that. So let me do that. Let's just go back to width. W, enter. Starting width is going to be 0. Ending width is going to be 0.04. Now, if I make the length of it 0.125, enter, enter. All right, so that supposedly is the correct proportion for an arrowhead. And you're saying, well, why the heck are you making an arrowhead? Doesn't AutoCAD make arrowheads for you? Yes, it does. But what if you needed one that was bigger? Well, you can make your own, like for a cutting plane line that you don't know anything about yet. You know, what if you needed to have one that was bigger? So you could take that and you could scale it up. Oh, what's scale? Well, scale is a modifying command that you can make something bigger or smaller. So scale is up here under modify right there. And so you can pick what you want to scale either before or after you go into the command. Scale is SC. I didn't even think about it. I just said I want to scale, and I typed in SC without even thinking about it. See, once you start using this, you won't even think about it, and you've already hit the button and hit the space bar to go into the command. Anyway, so might have something to do with 30 years of using it, right? Well, you guys can get that way still pretty quick, because I've always been that way for the most part. I mean, when I was in high school, I could do that. So you guys can easily do it. All right, so on scale, you have to pick a base point. So I'm going to pick the base point right here, and then it says scale factor. Well, if I wanted it to be 2, I could pick 2. That makes it 2 times bigger. All right, well, if I go back up and click on scale, or I can type in SC, and then I can pick what I want to scale, and then I hit enter. So here's the thing. You use enter to step through the command. If you pick it first, you're skipping a step, okay? If you go into the command first, you have to pick your item, then you have to hit enter before you go to the next step. So it's how you approach the command. All right, so I've picked all I want to pick, enter, then pick the base point. I'm going to pick the end point there, which that just happens to be the end of the line. It looks like the middle, but it's really the end. And then scale factor. What if I wanted it to be 0.25? So I can make it smaller. So that's how you can use a scale. And how you can make a arrowhead with the polyline command. Now, in one of my books that I used between this one and the one I started with, that was one of their exercises, and I thought it was really cool. So that's why I show people, hey, you want to know how to make an arrowhead? Here's a cool way to do it. Use your polyline command. So that was using polyline, and then we used p-edit, and then we used scale. So there's like 3 different commands that you've played with right there. All right, let's see, zoom back in and out. So to zoom in and out, all you do is push forward and back. Now, did I set my limits for this? No, I did not. Should I have? Probably, but I really am just randomly drawing things, so I don't really know how much area I need. So what the heck, why do I need to do limits? Well, eventually my zoom's not going to work. It might not let me draw outside my limits. So let's just look at what the heck are limits. So if I type in limits, if you look down in your command line, it says the lower left corner is always 0, 0. And that's what we want to leave it as. So that's the origin. And then where do you want to go out from there? And typically you go to the right and up from there. So you leave it at 0, 0, so you hit enter. The one that you want to change is the second set of coordinates, right? And it says it's 12 by 9. So that's 12 inches by 9 inches, or 12 millimeters by 9 millimeters, or it could be 12 miles by 9 miles, depending on what you want to say it is. So we usually consider it 12 inches by 9 inches. So if I wanted that to be larger, let's say that I wanted to have, you know, if my object was 100 by 100, then I'd make mine a little bit bigger than that. I might say 150 by 150. Your object doesn't have to be square, but I usually make my limits square. So like, instead of doing 12 by 9, let's say I wanted to do 20, 20. Enter. So now if I do Z enter and then EX for expense, then it zooms out to 20 by 20. Now obviously the rectangle area that I'm looking at is bigger than 20 wide, but you know, that's because I put my limits in a square, not a rectangle. But anyway, that's how you can use limits. So you have to look at how big is your object, and we'll beat this into your brain later, so it's okay. All right, so that's limits. Now let's talk about real quick down here. So this is how yours starts out. You have a command line in the middle. I don't like that. I don't know why they did that. They just don't want you to use the command line. But the command line has so much good information. It lets you know what the heck AutoCAD is doing. And so what I do is I grab it by the little dots over on the left and I pull it down, and then I make it like 3 or 4 lines tall. And how do you change that? Well, if you go to the top of it, you get the little arrows so that you can make it bigger, you can make it, oops, get the arrows, you can make it smaller. And that's what I do, because now I can see, you know, what it's looking for. Like for some reason it was talking about polygons. I'm like, I didn't do that. So I hit escape to get out of it because I didn't want to use that. Okay. So everybody confused? Probably. That's okay. So we've drawn with lines, we've drawn with polylines. We showed you how to scale some stuff. You know, if you want to move something, you can go to move. You can pick your object, or you can put a window around everything like that. And then you would hit enter to or space bar to go to the next part. Then base point. So you can pick a base point, like I could pick the end of this line, and then I can move it over. Let's say I wanted to move it over 20. Then it would move it over 20. You know, if I wanted to pick this and go M for move, enter, and then pick the end point there and go to the end point of that, I can do it that way too. So it depends on if you pick the stuff first or after you go into the command. If you go into the command first, then you have to hit enter once you've picked your stuff. to go to the starting from going to part. So that's move. Put a window around something. You can go to move. You pick a starting point. You can pick an ending point. You can type in a distance, a relative distance if you wanted to, if you needed to, a linear distance, vertical, horizontal. You can use your polar, like if you pick that, go to move, and you pick a starting point, and you want to go down at a 210-degree angle, you can do that. And you type in, let's say you wanted it to go 15 in that direction. And that's using polar. With polar on, sets 15 degrees. So those are some things that you can do. All right, so that's move. We use scale. So what happens with copy? You're like, well, why aren't you showing some of this other stuff? Well, I will, but let's go ahead and talk about if you use the copy command. So I've got copy, and I want to make a copy of this. So I hit enter, pick it, then I hit enter, and then I need to pick a base point. Now you'll notice that since I turned on that object snap called geometric center, now it goes to the center of this. It's a polygon. It's not a right polygon or normal polygon or standard polygon. It's just a multi-sided figure that's connected. It's still a polygon. So it will find the center of it. So let's say I wanted the center of that, which is kind of cool. So I can pick that, and now I can copy it wherever I want. And the nice thing about copy is it will automatically do multiples. So if I wanted to copy one here, one here, one here, and then maybe one up here, I don't know, like that. I can do that. When I'm done, I hit enter, not escape. You hit enter to finish out your commands. Okay, the other part of copy, if you go into copy and you pick it, and then you hit enter, and then let's say we pick a starting point. Now, if I don't put in a distance I want it to go, I could also do what we call an array. What if you want to make multiple copies in a direction a specific distance apart? You can do that by clicking on array down here in the command line, or you can type A, enter, and then it says number of items to array. Okay, let's say I wanted 5. Okay, now I've got 5, and now it's asking me for a distance. Do I want to go this way? And how far do I want them apart? Well, it's going from my starting point here, where I picked to copy from. So you have to bear that in mind. So let's say I wanted 20 apart from that direction. Well, it'll let me do that. You hold down your middle mouse button, you can pan, and then you can zoom in and out. So let's say, oh, well, it went that direction. So now I'm still copying, and I can copy randomly wherever I want. But it only did one of those arrays for me. An array is just either you're copying something into rows and columns, or you're doing a polar array, which is in a circle. But some of our other commands will do other commands inside of them, like copy will do an array. It'll do a linear array, in one direction at a time. All right, so I'm going to hit enter to finish out. So that's copy. Let's see. Well, let's go on over to circle. So in the circle command, under your draw, the circle command has a lot of options here. I use the circle command more than I use the arc command. because you can do more with it and it's a little bit easier to navigate. So you've got center radius, which means it goes from the center out to the edge. That's your radius. Or I can do, and so for example, center radius, you pick your center and there's a circle with whatever radius that is. If I didn't know how big it was, I could pick on it. And if you right click, you can open up properties, which is right there already for me. And it tells me that the radius is 7.4914 units, whatever that is. That could be millimeters, that could be inches, be miles, whatever I want it to be. All right, so while I've got it picked, I can actually change this distance by picking on the grip, and you can edit with your grips too. So if I wanted it to be 12 instead of whatever that was, and I accidentally hit my mouse button, type in 12, there we go. So now it's 12. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, hit escape. Escape, there we go. Because I don't want to edit. If you have something selected, you just hit escape to get out of it. Okay, so that's a radius circle. So then if I come over here to circle and I do center diameter, and then I say, okay, well, I'm going to do a 12 diameter circle. So I can pick it, I can type in 12, and there's a diameter of 12. It's smaller than my 12 radius circle. So they're different, right? Diameter goes all the way across, radius goes halfway. So I need to pay attention to what my drawing wants, right? Now here's what happens. This isn't, right there is not where you get goofed up. What happens is, and I'll even do it myself, I'll draw a diameter circle, right? Draw a diameter circle, and then I'll hit enter to draw another circle. Do you know what the problem with that is? When I hit enter, it goes back into circle, but the default is radius. So if I wanted a diameter circle, I would have to remember that I'm in radius, and I would have to specify down here diameter, or hit D for diameter, and then it would draw it as a diameter. So that's where you have to be careful between on the circle command. So you've got radius, you've got diameter, you got a 2-point circle. So I can draw one from that quadrant to that intersection or quadrant. You've got a 3-point circle, so that I can draw one from here to here, all the way over to there. Notice it's not tangent. So what if I wanted it to be tangent? Well, there is an option for that. The next one here is TTR, which is tangent, tangent, radius. So what does tangent mean? Tangent means that it touches in one spot only. If they overlap, they're not tangent. So if I tell you that you didn't make it tangent, that means that you didn't use the tangent command to make it tangent. So TTR goes like this. Tangent, tangent, and then I have to put in a radius. So let's say 20. Let's see if that works. Okay, that's cool. So it's tangent with this one, it's tangent with this one. I just didn't realize that I wasn't thinking, I don't have the exact measurements, I'm just drawing stuff. So those overlap, and they're not, these aren't tangent anyway. So okay, well, let's say I didn't like that. I can pick that, hit delete. You can also go to erase, E for erase, pick your items, and then the nice thing about erase, or even if you delete something, is what if you get 3 steps later and you realize that you shouldn't have deleted something that you just deleted? Oh no, now I'm going to have to undo all this stuff I just did. Well, not exactly. What do you say when you goof up? You say, whoops. You say, oh well. Or you say some colorful language. The nice thing, colorful language mostly. But the nice thing about AutoCAD is there's an oops command. So if you make an oops, you can type that in. OOPS. Oops. Now, who the heck thought oops would be a cool thing? Well, it is. It will undo or unerase or bring back, undelete the last thing that you erased or deleted. No matter how many steps back it is, you can bring it back. As long as you didn't close out the drawing and turn it back and bring it back up. Now all this stuff only works, like undo, redo, that kind of stuff, only works while you're using the file right there. If you close it, you're done. Okay? It's in that session, so to speak. All right, so I didn't really want that, so I'm going to hit delete, and I don't want any. But I do want to make a circle that's tangent with all 3 of these circles. So how can I do that? I can go to TTT, or tangent, tangent, tangent. Say that one 16 times. How do you think that's going to work? All right, so I click on there. Notice you get the little tangent sign. So you pick, you get another tangent sign, and you get another tangent sign. So now it touches, the circle touches all 3 in one spot. So why is that a good thing? Well, if you don't have them tangent, you can't trim. Now, this is the command that drives me crazy because they changed it too much. They made one slight change that was really good, but then they made another change. They made it a little more over the top than I needed, but that's okay. You just learn how to make it work. So when you go to trim, which is the little scissors up here, now you have trim and you have extend. We're going to do trim first. So if I just go into trim, everything is a cutting edge. So I can delete stuff, like I can just pick on this circle and it'll go away. But then if I pick on this, it'll get rid of just that part because these touch. They either overlap or they're tangent. And like I could get rid of that piece there, that piece there, and let's say I wanted to get rid of that piece, and then I could get rid of that piece. And so now I've got a piece that goes all the way around here, and then let's say I wanted to get rid of that piece and have it look like that. Or maybe my actual piece is supposed to look like this. And then that's kind of cool. Now, if I hadn't have hit enter, then I could have undone any of those that I just did. Now, let's see if oops works for anything on here. So if I type in oops, okay, that's just the one that I deleted earlier, so don't really want that. Control Z. So Control Z is undo. But that's how trim works if you don't do anything. Now I'm going to do an undo because I want to redo this. Let's say that I only want to use this circle and this circle to trim with. Because this is how you have to do it. Used to, you went into trim, you picked your item that you wanted to trim with to use as cutting edges, and then you would hit enter, and then you would get rid of what you didn't want. Well, now you just go into trim, and it automatically picks everything. Well, if you want to do a strategic or precise trim, which does happen sometimes, you can pick your 2 objects that are your multiple objects that you want to trim with, and then you can go into trim, and then you pick what you want to trim out. So then I can pick one of these to get rid of. It's not going to get rid of, well, I guess I would get rid of both. But anyway, but it's not necessarily going to get rid of anything else because I only picked those two circles to use for my cutting edges. So depending on what you're doing, when you go into trim, you may want to be more surgical, and I will be that way when I'm showing you how to do some of the assignments. When you're done, hit enter to finish out or the space bar. And like I said, if you just go into trim, and you can just start getting rid of stuff left and right until you're left with the shape that you want. And go from there. Now, what happens if you want to extend something? Well, the funny thing is while you're in trim, you can actually extend also. What do you mean? Well, if you hold down shift, then you can extend. So I can extend that back over to there. Or if I hold down shift, I can extend that back over to there. Or if I hold down shift, I can extend that back around to there. Or if I hold down shift, I can do that. You won't let me go back. Oh no, it won't let me go back. No. Okay. I guess I've shifted, I've extended all it's going to let me extend from where I trimmed it. You're like, but you were in trim. Yes, but if you hold down shift, you can do the opposite, which is extend. So what does that mean? That means that if I go to extend up here, which now I don't have anything to extend, I don't think. No, it doesn't want to extend. So now I'm out of luck, right? Well, okay, so what if I draw a line? And I draw me a line from here to there. Now, if I go into extend, then I can just pick the line. Whatever end of the line is going towards where I want it to go. So it has to be over the halfway part. And then I can just pick. Now extend, I typically don't pick where I want it to go. I mean, you can, especially if you have to go through three things to get there. So how about this? Let's do this. Let me draw a line. I'm going to draw a line right here, like that. Now what if I want this line to go all the way over to here? I don't think it'll hit one of these guys, but we'll see. So, okay, if I hit extend, and I don't do anything else, I just hit extend, now it's just going to go there first. Then it's going to go there. Then it has to go here. And then it has to go here. It has to go here, here, and then there. Okay, how many steps was that? That was a bunch. Well, what I could do is I could pick this guy over here, go to extend, and then just pick that line, and it'll go directly over there. So it's like trim. You can do a precise extend as well. You know, why waste your time clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking when you could just pick where you wanted it to go the first time and send it there. Now, while you're in extend, you can hold down shift and start trimming things. Let's see. Well, we'll get rid of the stuff over here. And let's say, see, I can trim stuff out. But yet, if I go back, now I'm back to extend, and you know, I can extend things back to where they were. Yeah, now I can go back over to there. Go 20 further. Okay. Oh, I can extend that back around. Okay, so if you're in extend, you hit shift, it trims. If you're in trim, if you hold down shift, you can extend. I don't very often, but it's a handy thing to know how to do. And it's one of those, like, if you get in the habit of using it, it kind of makes sense after a while. Okay, so we've drawn circles. We're going to remember that if we're drawing a circle and we draw with the diameter up in the ribbon, that if I hit enter to go draw another circle, it's going to default to radius. If for some reason your drawing doesn't look right, take a minute and say, you know what? Something's not working here. I must have done something. What did I do? Okay, well, what you do is you hit escape and you go pick the object that you're trying to figure out what it is, and you can right click on it and go to properties. And you can find out all that you need to find out. You can figure out that, oh, well, I have a radius of 20 and it should tell me the diameter somewhere. Well, usually it tells you the diameter too, but anyway, you can figure out pretty quick that the radius, if the radius was 20, but yet you needed a diameter of 20, like, oh, well, I guess I should have made that 10 since I need a diameter of 20. So that's how you can figure out if you goofed up. Because everybody goofs up. Even I goof up. So it's okay. You're learning. And I already know how to do it. But yet, stuff happens. And it's okay. All right, so we've got our circles. The next thing are arcs. I'll just be honest with you, the 3-point arc is probably one of the few ones. I'll use it occasionally. You pick 3 points that you need. There you go. Now, if, let's say, and see if you hit A for arc, it defaults to a 3-point arc. And let's say you said tangent, T-A-N, enter. And then I want it T-A-N, enter. So you can type in your object snaps. And then let me see if I can make it tangent to this guy. T-A-N, enter, and I'm going to pick that guy right there. Okay, so I've got it tangent to 3 pieces on there. And you're like, how'd you do that? Well, I'll show you. It's pretty simple. You just go into arc. I'm going to do a 3-point arc. And then if you hold down shift and right click, you can get options. Now, that's not what I did a minute ago, but this is another way you can do this. I spent 20 years on AutoCAD and nobody showed me this. So I make sure to show it to people all the time. If you want to pick an object snap without typing it in, or you're not sure what it is because you're just learning, you can hold down shift, right click while you're in the middle of a command, and it'll say, hey man, here are some. So let's say you want a tangent. You pick tangent. All right, so I want tangent with this guy. And let's say I wanted it tangent down here. Or I wanted to go to quadrant. I could pick quadrant, right? And then let's say I wanted it to go to this quadrant over here. I could pick quadrant. I could also type in quadrant if I wanted to. Because if you want it to go to a specific place, like tangent or parallel or perpendicular, then those are the ones that I type in or I right click, shift right click and select. So I can type in quadrant and it's only going to look for a quadrant for me to hook to. Doesn't care about anything else. I can go to the middle of this, doesn't do it. Looks for that quadrant, that quadrant, that quadrant. Now that's kind of how you can do it. So if you shift right click, whether you're in a command or not, it's going to give you your object snaps. Now, one of the reasons I show you that is because if you wanted to draw a line from the distance between two places that you can't find. So let's say I wanted to go from this intersection, draw it between this intersection and the middle of that. How do I find the middle of that? Well, if I shift right click, I can do mid between 2 points. Now, you guys are not going to remember this, but I think this is one of the coolest things anybody ever showed me. Because how many times was I trying to find the center of something that I couldn't find the center of? Well, you don't know that answer, but a lot. So I thought it was really cool. Just like that geometric center object snap is really cool. So if you click on mid between 2 points, then you can pick your 2 points and it will start your line in the middle of that. Otherwise, I would have to draw a line between those 2 points for, a construction line, and then I'd have to draw my line. So, kind of cool. I think so. Like the guy says on Facebook, that's pretty cool. Now I'm following the guy. Crazy enough? So, we've done lines, polylines, circles. Now, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of arc commands. Are any of them worth anything? Well, to me, there's too many options here. So you have the start, center, end, start, center, angle, start, center, length, start, end, angle, start, end, direction, start, end, radius, center, start, end, center, start, something, center, start, angle, and center, start, length. Lord have mercy. Now, if you were drawing something that required you to do an arc length, that might be a one to use. Maybe you're going from the center, and then you do start, and you do your arc length. That's kind of what that's doing. If you were given that to draw something, so that might be an option. But the only one that I use besides a 3-point arc is probably this start in direction one. And the only reason I use it is because it's an easy way to make a half circle like that. You can just pick 2 ends, move your cursor vertical to where it's, completely vertical, 90 degrees, and you can draw a half circle. Now you also draw a circle, has a line through it, and trim it off. You can do that too. But that's what I use it for. That's about the only reasons that I do that. Now the other thing that you can do is if you have a rectangle here, so this is the rectangle and polygon command. So if I do a rectangle and I draw a rectangle, and then I want an arc to fit inside that rectangle, then you can go do a 3-point arc, and you can pick the middle of that and there, and you can have an arc that fits inside of that box. That works pretty well. It's kind of cool. So just in general, the arcs, there's a lot there, and there might be times when they might be handy, but for the most part, a 3-point arc or the start in direction are about the only ones that I've found a good use for. Now, like I said, if you were out in a job and you might find a use for one of those, you'd be like, hey, Mr. Doty, I was able to use this to draw this. Okay, well, that's cool. Well, you know where to find it, so there you go. Okay, so rectangle command. So the rectangle command is just like what it says. You draw a rectangle. Now, if you wanted to draw it a specific size, you can do that. Notice that it gives you the length and the width, or the height and the width, or length, whichever way you want to go. Length and width kills me because they're the same thing. except in math, they're not. But math should have thought differently. You have length, you have height, and you have depth. Those are our dimensions. So anyway, so if I want to specify the length of it or the width of it, I could say maybe I want it to be 120 wide. And then if you hit the tab command, you can go to the other dimension. And let's say I wanted it to be 60 tall. And then you hit enter to finish it out. Now, if I hit enter to go back into it, or space bar, which is what I hit, then you can put corner, you can round off the corners by hitting the fillet command. And no, it's not fillet. It's not a fish. It's not a piece of meat. It's a fillet. If you're a welder, you know what I mean. Fillet means you fill in the corner, or in our case, you can also lop off the corner. So we can put fillets or rounds on the corners of our rectangle. So let's say we wanted it to be 5. We hit enter. Then when we draw our rectangle, notice it has rounded corners. And let's say I wanted it 80, tab 50. All right, so now the next time I go into it, it has fillets. Well, maybe I want chamfers. What's a chamfer? Well, a chamfer, I'm going to leave it at 5 and hit enter, and then hit enter again because it's 2 distances for a chamfer. I'll show you why in a minute. And then I can draw it, and now it has angles on the corners that are at 45 degrees. Why are they at 45 degrees? Because they have equal lengths on the triangle. That's what a 45 has. So when you use distance for the chamfer command, both of the distances are the same because it's a 45 degree angle. All right, so let's say I wanted this one 70 by 40. So now it's got, and then what if I don't want anything on the corners? Then I can change the chamfer distance to 0. And now I should be able to go back to having just squared off like that. Now what if I drew my rectangle and I decided I wanted to have rounded corners on it? Do I have to redraw it? Probably not. I ask you a rhetorical question, you're probably going to say, well, probably not, right? And I'm probably going to say, yeah, exactly. Because the cool thing is you can do lots of different things. And just because I do something one way doesn't mean that you might be able to do it another way and still get to the same place. Sometimes my way might be faster, but does that make your way wrong? No, it's just different. Now, you may have a boss that tells you that your way is wrong, but that's your boss. You know, it's just like when we talk about teachers. You know, Mr. Anderson does things a certain way. I do things a certain way. Well, you have bosses that want you to do a procedure a certain way. Doesn't matter that there may be a different way to do it. That's not the way they want you to do it. Maybe they have a reason. So there you go. So that's why you have to, you know, take that into consideration. So anyway, how do I put rounded corners on this box without redrawing it? Well, let's see. Can I go to properties and change it? Let's see. Click on it and go to properties. Let's see. Don't really see anything there. Okay. All right. Is there a command that I can use to knock off the corners? Well, obviously there has to be, right? Because there's one to make one with corners on it, or without corners on it. So there has to be a command called the fillet command, right? Well, you wouldn't necessarily know, but Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So they took this fillet command and they added it onto the rectangle command just to make things a little easier. But what if you need to do it later? Now the only difference is this is a polygon. Now, let me explain something about polygons. We haven't made one yet, but we will in a minute. I mean, this is a polygon, it's a rectangle. But we can make them with multiple sides too. What happens is, when you go to edit these things, sometimes you have to explode it to get it to do what you want it to do, so to speak. And we'll talk about explode at some point. But for right now, we need to round off these corners, because I keep rambling about it, right? Okay, so the fillet command is right here. It's under extend and trim. You got trim and extend. Right under it is what we have: fillet, chamfer, and blended curves. So what the heck are these? Well, I just showed you what a chamfer was, which was the angled corners. A fillet is a rounded corner. So we can do fillet first, because that's what we want to do. And so if I go into fillet and I just start trying to pick things, what's going to happen? It's going to trim or do nothing. In this case, it's not going to do anything because I didn't do something. So I guarantee if you have a problem and you go, why won't this thing round off these corners? Well, it's because you didn't set the radius. Both axles, boom, boom. And that's just what happens. You forgot to set the radius. Oh, that's right. Okay, it happens. I've done it before. So you go into fillet, and the first thing you have to do is change the radius. Why do I make a big deal out of this? Because people don't listen. You've already tuned me out. It's okay. You have to put in the radius for it to work. End of story. So what's the radius? Well, we'll just say 5, because I know 5 will work. Then it says, hey man, what do you want to do? I want to go ahead and fillet this corner. So there's that. Well, I wanted to do all 4, or I wanted to do 2 of them. Now what? Well, I just hit spacebar and go back into it, or hit enter and go back into it, and then I can do the other corner. Okay, well, what if I wanted to do more than one at a time? Can you do that? Yes, you can. All you have to do is go back in here. Once you're back in fillet, go back to multiple, and now you can fillet the rest of them. And you can zoom out. You can start filleting whatever you want. You can fill it on here, like that. You can do a fillet from here to there. And notice that it trimmed out stuff for me. Now, there are times where it won't. If it's a circle, if it's a full circle, it won't trim out the circle. Like if you pick this and this, well, that's not a full circle, sorry. Is this a full circle? I think it is. Here and there. So see, it didn't trim this guy out because he's a full circle. This guy wasn't a full circle. And that's okay. When you do the frog one, which is the next to last, or is it the last? It's the last one, 212. When you do that one, there's one of them where you actually put a fillet, you can put a fillet in, and it leaves your circle like it's supposed to, and it's fine. Okay, so that's fillet command, and then if you don't want it to trim, you can tell it not to trim. So like there's times where we do a thing called a run out. That's where you would tell it not to trim. But most of the time you want it to trim. All right, so the next thing you have are chamfers. All right, so on a chamfer, it won't do anything put in a distance or a distance and an angle. Most of your chamfers are going to be at 45 degrees. In this class, they're going to be at 45 degrees. Maybe in another class, you might have a 30-degree one. Well, when you measure an angle, you've got two options. You either need to know the distance, the location of both ends, or you have to know the location of one end and an angle. Well, you have that option in here. You can either go with distance or angle. And I usually just show the distance one because that's the typical one we use. So then if it's 5 and then 5, then you would just pick the thing that you want to chamfer. And just like on the other one, if you go into multiple, you can do multiple chamfers. Just like in fillet. Okay. Now, if you had one that was at a different angle, then you have to think about which side is my angle on, so you have to know which one to pick first. So let's say that I have this up here, and I want to do a 30-degree angle chamfer. So I have to go back into chamfer, CHA is chamfer. Okay, well, what if I want to do one with an angle? So I pick on angle, and then I need to know what the distance for one side of it is. Let's say it's 5. And let's say the angle was 30 degrees. All right, so then I would have to think which side needs to be at 30 degrees and which side isn't. So let's say the vertical side is not the one at the angle, and then I click on that. Click on the top one, so now there's my 30 degrees on vertical. If I do the same thing, and I pick the horizontal first, and then pick this one, then it's off the horizontal. So whichever one you pick first, that's what the angle's going to be off of. And I know it's a lot of stuff.
Went scooting right along, it did.
Yep. So you just have to kind of do it one thing at a time. Okay? All right, so that's your chamfer command. And we've done arcs, we've done this, so now we've got polygons. So on one of your assignments, you have to draw a pentagon. So how many sides does a pentagon have? 5. 5 sides. A hexagon has 6 sides. An octagon is a stop sign. My lovely daughter, who is pretty good with geometry in general and shapes and stuff, occasionally gets them mixed up on the hexagon and the octagon. But that's okay. I think most people do. And unless you use it all the time, you don't really, sometimes you're like, it doesn't really, mean anything to you. But she's gotten a lot better with math and shapes and things. And heck, she drew something really cool last night. And I'm like, I can't do that. So she has to be able to, make shapes do things in 3D. So there you go. Anyway, so pentagon has 5. So we type in 5. And then you have to pick a center point. Then it asks you the question that really messes with people. Would you like it inscribed or circumscribed? What does that mean? Well, to give you a hint, they help you out. Inscribed means it's inside of something, okay? It's inside a circle, to be honest. So to draw any polygon, you need a circle. Well, you can't draw a rectangle with a circle. You have to use an ellipse, but anyway. But any other one, you can use a circle. And so what the lovely people who programmed this didn't think about is that anytime you look on a drawing, you're always given the diameter of that circle. You're never given the radius. So when you have to draw a hexagon or a pentagon or something later on, think about what you're drawing. Did I give you the diameter, which is across the corners or across the flats? Or did I give you the radius, which is what this actual command wants? Okay, so I have inscribed inside of a circle. So let's go inside first. And then I'm going to not draw it straight, apparently. So then what I want to do is, I'll bring it straight up. There it is. Okay, so then I need to put in what the radius is. So then let's say the radius was going to be 15. So I'll type in 15. There's that. So if I draw a circle, radius circle, and notice, see, I've got geometric center on. So I can hover over the edge, then go to the center of it. And then if I draw out to the midpoint, that is the circle. Well, that's actually a circumscribed. So then if I do it again, and then I go out to the points. Here we go. So what I just drew was inscribed inside this circle right here. Okay? So they use an imaginary circle, and it draws it inside of it. And that circle has a radius, okay? When you get things in real life and you have to draw a polygon, they give you the diameter. So just remember that you might have to change that. Now, the first couple of ones, the first one where you use pentagon, they give you the radius. So you're okay. But just remember, radius and diameter on your circles, and don't get confused on when you draw stuff. So now, if I go into, I need a polygon, POL, and let's say I want a 5-sided creature, enter, and the center of it's going to be right here, and then I want it circumscribed. All right, so this time I'm going to type in 15, and this time it's on the outside of the circle. So I'm going to get rid of this circle because that's not the circle. So circumscribed means it draws it on the inside. I mean, circumscribed means it draws it on the outside. Inscribed means it draws it on the inside.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Have a good day. So anyway, that's the difference between the two. Inscribed, it's inside a circle. Circumscribed, it's outside. Now, SolidWorks, it does it completely different. I don't even remember how Inventor does it. But SolidWorks, I haven't quite figured out which way it does it. So it's different than here, so it messes with me. This one I understand. I either want it inside the circle or outside the circle, and inscribed means in, circumscribed means out. All right, so we beat that dead horse. All right, so now you got two or three more commands in the draw area. You got this is an ellipse, and you can draw an ellipse, very simple, from a center point. So you draw the center, you draw half of, where is it, the whole? I don't remember. Let's see. Okay, so you draw half of the major axis, so it has a major and minor axis. Major is bigger, minor is smaller, obviously. And then you do the vertical axis, half of it. And that's an ellipse. It's just a squished circle, right? Looks like a rugby ball. Well, that one's a little bit more squished than a rugby ball. But typically an ellipse kind of looks like a rugby ball. You can't say a football because a football is kind of pointy. Rugby ball is kind of more rounded off. You got to be a real man to play rugby.
Not anymore. I'm breaking my face.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with rugby is it's a little too rough.
It breaks hands.
It breaks lots of stuff. My nephew knows well. So anyway, so ellipse is just a squished circle, and like I said, center point you draw from the center, and you're drawing half of the major axis, half of the minor axis, and then you go to the next one, which is axis and endpoint. So you've got the whole axis, right? And then you do half of the vertical axis. We're going to use that later on to draw one of our things. And then you have the elliptical arc, which I don't use very often. Here's why. If I pick this starting point and this starting point, and then typical put in my distance, now it's like, wait a minute, now what? Okay, well, what if I want to start here? If I go this direction, it's going to keep that part. If I go this direction, yeah, exactly. Don't you love it when your phone picks up? I didn't even try that. So it depends on if you start on the left or the right. You're like, what do you mean? Well, so let's do this. Let's go back, and this is why I don't use it very often, because it's one of those where you have to, like, so if I pick from here to here and here to here, that part doesn't matter. I could go left to right, right to left to get my axis, that's fine. So I get my shape, but I only want to keep part of it. So do I want to keep the top part or the bottom part? Okay, well, if I start on the left-hand side, I think it only keeps the bottom. So if I start over here, then it only keeps the bottom, and then I could keep a quarter of it, or I could keep 3/4 of it, or I could keep half of it. But it goes from there. Well then, we can't do that. You have to actually, ellipse, you have to go in and pick that one. So then if I do the same thing, and then I start over here, now it's only going to draw the top part, or, I can draw it just in the top part, or I can draw it around to here. But in general, it's mostly drawing the top piece of it. The only time I've ever found sort of use of this is in making an elliptical window for a house, for an elevation. That's the only time I've ever really used it. It's kind of like arcs. It's not as useful as the full, like the ellipse commands, the other two, either the axis endpoint or center endpoint, center axis, anyway. Those two are more useful because it draws it, then you can trim out what you don't want. To me, that's just the easier way to do it. Now, does that mean that you can't use it somewhere? Probably it may, for something it might be, maybe there's something that it works really well at. I don't, it's just, in my experience, I do better with the full thing. Full shape. All right, so the next thing, down here. So now we have the hatch command. So when you cut into something and you want to section it and you want to show the material or give something a pattern, then you use what we call the hatch command. So if I click on hatch, then it goes to this here where I can pick whether I want it to be solid, I want it to be an angle, and Z31 is the typical one. And so that must be pretty big because those are, see, those are actually spaced. So how do I make things bigger? Well, see, if that was metric, then I would say, oh, I need to turn this into a metric scale, so I need to scale these up. So I can go up here to my scale, and I can change it to 25.4, and now it's a metric size. That would make sense to somebody. Or if you were doing architecture, you might have to scale it to 48 so that it matched for a 1/4-inch scale drawing if you were doing elevations of a house. And while you're in it, in the hatch command, you can hatch. Well, I will have to say this. It's only going to hatch where you were zoomed into. It does have some limits on that. So whatever you want to hatch, you need to make sure if you're going to do it all in one command, you need to be zoomed out to where, or do it multiple times, and it'll let you do it. Now, I won't do this because it's not enclosed. But if I wanted to do other parts, see, I can do other parts if I want to. But I won't do this over here because I wasn't zoomed out to it. So what if I want to change the pattern? Well, let's look at all the patterns. I've got this one, I've got bricks, I've got concrete, and notice they're too big. There's ANSI 138, 34, 35, 36, 37. Those are all material types. I would have to go look up what they are to know which one is which. One of them might be bronze, one of them might be aluminum, one of them might be steel, one of them might be stainless steel, copper. You know, different materials can have different section patterns. So anyway, and then when you're done, you can pick close hatch creation, and now you have those. Now what if you want to edit it? You can pick it, it'll pull this back up, and you can change the scale if you wanted to. Let's say you wanted it to be 15. Let's say it needed to be a different one of these, you needed it to be that pattern, and then you can close it. So that's the hatch command. Okay, so you got that one. You can do gradients, but anyway, hatch is normally what we use. All right, now under draw, there's only a couple other ones that I use, 2 or 3 maybe, under the rest of that little draw thing that I'm going to go over real quick. So one of them is spline. So a spline fit, or a fit spline, is whenever you want something to kind of match points on a curve. So let's say I wanted that tangent. TAN enter, and then I'll go to the middle of that, middle of that, middle of that, up to the, well, with the tangent of this, TAN enter, and then let's say, then I wanted to close it, I could hit C for close, and that's a spline. What do you use a spline for? Well, a fit spline you can use whenever we're, like I have a class where we draw schematics of a cam. So you do the profile of a cam. Well, you have points on a line that you make, you have to have that curve, you know, go through each of those points. Well, you can use a spline to do that. And then later on, you can figure out the distance at each angle that is out from the center of your, or off of the base circle on a cam, and then you can finish it off by drawing a spline that will give you that shape without having to do a bunch of trimming and 3-point arcs and all that fun stuff. So it's not a tool you use very often, but you can make odd shapes or uneven shapes, like you were doing a joystick. You know, that's a kind of shape, that irregular shape where you can do that. Now the one that's not a fit spline, I don't like that one because it's goofy. Construction lines. So she uses construction lines in here when she's talking about a construction line. The only thing I think of on a construction line is there was a video game that looked like this, and there were these spiders that were coming out after you, and you had your little C-shaped looking thing, and you would roll around. You had a roller ball, kind of like on Centipede, and you'd roll around in a circle, shooting at the stuff that was coming out of the vortex. That's my use for a construction line. The reason I don't like it is because it goes into infinity both ways. So to me, it adds extra, it makes things too busy. But if you like it, that's fine. You might see a video that has it on there, and that's fine. But I'm not a fan. Now, what I do like, there is one on here called Ray. Now, Ray's pretty cool. He's a cool person. He sure is. Now, Ray, what he does is you can start from a point and draw a line in to infinity from one point. Now, I'm not going to normally draw lines that go from the same point like that, because then I end up playing my game. But I just want to show you the difference. So the other one is a construction line, or X line is what the command is. This is Ray. I like Ray better. Sorry, I don't like X line. It's just my thing. But there are two different things that you can use to, help you line things up. And I picked it and hit delete. If I type in oops, it'll come back. All right, so we talked about lines, polylines, circles, arcs, hatch, polygons, rectangles, ellipses, splines, X-line or construction line, and rays. What about divide? I thought divide was modified. Okay. Well, what happens if you need to have a line cut into, or let's just say this arc right here. Let's say you wanted that arc cut into 8 pieces, or at least divided off, so that you can see those 8 pieces along that arc. So what you can do is you can use the divide command. So you click on draw, on the Y it's under draw, we got divide and measure. Okay, so there's divide. So then you pick your object, you pick the number of segments you need, let's say 10, and there it is. And now you're like, well, heck, I can't see anything. Why can't I see anything? Well, to use the divide command, you have to turn something on, or actually change something. There's a style called the point style that you have to adjust. How do you get there? Well, let's see. Point. All right, it's not there. PS, no. All right, so I don't know what the shortcut is, but I do know if I go up here to this pull-down menu that you don't have. Well, if we don't have it, how are we supposed to find it? Well, here's how you get the pull-down menu. if you go up here to your quick access toolbar, you go over to the end of it next to where it says share, and you got the little paper airplane. You click on the little down arrow and you get what you can turn off and on to make visible, right? Well, one of the things that you can enable is the menu bar. It's the next to last one on there. You'll notice mine says hide. Yours would say show. So if I click on it, mine goes away. No, I want that back. So I click on that again. I click on show menu bar. Now I've got a menu up here. What's in the menu? All kinds of good stuff, Grandpa. If you ever watched Hee Haw, you know what I mean. What's for dinner, Grandpa? Really wanted some cornbread for lunch, but oh well. Guess I gotta work on that. Okay, so what I'm looking for is under format, I have all these different styles. So you're like, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, point style. That's what he was talking about before he went off on cornbread. So point style, what do I need to do? So you go to point style, and if you'll change it to something like maybe an X and hit OK, oh, will you look at that? So now anytime I use the divide command, or I could do, there's a point command where you can actually just put points on the screen that you can draw to. You have to use the node command to do that. But now I can draw something from or to these points. So what if we use the ray command that I don't like? Or no, I like that one, right? So we use the ray command. And let's say I went from the middle of here and I wanted to go to this guy. Uh-oh, it won't hook on. No, it won't hook on. What is that? Well, that's a node. So I could type that in, N-O-D-E, node. And then it'll hook onto it. Well, what if I wanted to draw something to each one of these? Do I have to keep typing in node? Well, no, I could hold shift right click and click on node and it would do it. Yeah, but that's dumb. What if you want to do it more? Well, then you go down here, you click on your object snap setting thing right here, and you turn node on. So it's okay to go in and change your object snap settings. If you know you're going to use the node command a lot, then turn it on. You know, if quadrant, I don't have that one on all the time, but I definitely don't turn tangent on, and I don't turn on parallel or perpendicular, just because those are always really specific. But now node is just one of those things that I could leave it off or on, it doesn't matter. I just typically don't turn it on. But if I leave it on, now I can automatically click on the node and I can just keep drawing and drawing and drawing, and there we go. Now I've got that divided into, I think, 10 pieces is what I did. So that's how you use the divide command. Now there was a measure command on here, but honestly, if you want to use something to measure something, like not put dimensions on, but let's say you want to check a measurement. If you try to use the dimension command, depending on the size of your thing that you're drawing, your geometry, like if it's metric, you're not going to see it because of the scale. It's not scaled up big enough. So how can I easily figure out a measurement? Well, up here under the utilities, you can click on measure right here, and you put distance. And let's say you wanted to know how far it was from here over to here. Well, you do that, it gives you the distance. What if you needed to know the area of something? Well, if it's an enclosed object, you can do area, and you could pick the corners of what you wanted to do. Like, let's say I wanted that triangular area, and then I hit enter. It tells me how much that area is. Now, obviously, that's not 100% correct because I don't have that little art part, but I could probably get that if I needed to. I could figure out a way to get it. I believe if you, I think you can actually do shape with that too. So if you click on area, and let's see, do I have one that's just a shape? Let me see if I can do shape. So it says object. So if I pick object and I pick this circle, then it'll tell me what the area is of that circle. Do you know what makes this handy for? Building speaker boxes. Why is it good for making speaker boxes? Because you can just draw the, okay, do you know how much of a pain it is to try to do all the math to figure out a rectangle and then a triangle, and then you have to add it together, and then you have to take that, and then you have to add your depth to get your volume? Yes, I sat in class doing that sometimes while I was listening, because I could do that. I could draw something, still listen to what they're doing, and write notes down. Not sure how I did that, but I was able to do that. Maybe it wasn't that interesting what he was talking about, or he went on for another, you know, he was doing some spiel like I'm doing right now. Well, I found that it was really cool that if I draw the outline or the cross section of the space inside the box, of course, I'm also drawing up sizes so that I can figure out how to cut it, right? Well, I can figure out the airspace, so I can figure out if it's big enough, and then I can figure out if the speaker is going to fit. So that's kind of cool. So that's something I've used it for. So anyway, but if you needed to know something like that, you can do distances, radiuses, angles, areas, volumes. Well, we're not worried about volumes because that's 3D. So anyway, but that's under utilities right here. All right, so you got your draw. Let's see, what else we got here? I don't use this helix. Region, no. Wipeout, no. 3D polyline, no. Okay, so the other one that I use that I show people is the donut command. So if you have a donut, you can make a car. What's the first thing I drew whenever I was learning how to use AutoCAD? I drew a goofy Beetle. Volkswagen Beetle, because it was real easy. It's arcs, you know, and a couple of donuts. I got wheels. So usually what I do is I show people, I say, oh, well, you can draw donuts. So you can do, let's say the inside's 0.5, the outside's 1. And so there are my two wheels, right? Or maybe those are the eyes, and then you can have a mouth and a nose and make a gecko or something. Well, what if you made the inside 0, the outside 1? What if you were doing a circuit? Let's say this is a circuit. Well, everywhere that there's an intersection where the lines actually come together and maybe have a connector or they're soldered, they would have dots. So, you know, that's a use for the donut command. So you can make a filled-in hole or a point that has a center point that you can use. So that's how you can use a donut command. All right, so now we're hungry because we've heard donuts. Okay, so I showed you the move, copy. I didn't show you much else. Scale, extend, trim, chamfer, fillet. Sorry, I need to check this real quick. All right. Okay, so let's go with stretch. How do we use stretch? Okay, remember I mentioned that some commands require you to use a certain window. Okay, so that means that stretch, you have to start on the right, the left, and you go part way across the object that you want to make bigger or smaller. Anything that is inside of that will move. Only the parts that you are catching over there on the left, those are the pieces that will stretch. Either get longer or stretch and get shorter. So I pick, stretch, then I click on that, then I hit enter. Now you can only do one window at a time. As far as I know, it only likes doing one window at a time. So don't try to pick multiple things. Pick it all in one thing. One motion, one window, and so on. So, excuse me. Then you have to pick a base point. And then you can make it bigger. If there's a specific distance, let's say you needed to go 20, then you can stretch it that way. If you needed to stretch it this way, and you needed to go in, and you needed to go in 5, you could stretch it up 5. So there are ways for you to edit things and make things do what you want it to do. And that's how to use the stretch command. So we've got move, copy, stretch, okay, rotate. All right, find a good thing to rotate. I guess we'll just use this guy right here. So let's say I go to rotate, I pick the object, I hit enter, base point, I'm going to pick the geometric center, and then I can rotate it whatever way I want to rotate it, or I can type in an angle. Let's say I wanted to rotate it 10 degrees. Which way is it going to go? It's going to go counterclockwise. So if I needed to rotate it clockwise, what do? I put in a negative. So if I wanted to rotate it down 10 degrees, I put in -10. If I wanted to rotate it from this corner and I wanted to rotate it 45 degrees, it's going to go up and rotate counterclockwise. Okay, what if I wanted to rotate it along the axis of the middle of this so I could straighten it up? How would I do that? Let's say I didn't know what angle it was at, but I want to straighten it up. Here's how you do it. You go to rotate, pick it, enter. Base point, I'm going to use this right here. Now, if you use the reference option, you can specify basically the line that you want to rotate it on. And so I can rotate it down to where it's straight, like that. I know I went over that really fast. Now, if you can do that, you can pass the AutoCAD exam. Because that was the one thing I had to learn how to do that I didn't understand how it worked. So I learned how to do it, and now I make sure I teach everybody how to do it. So reference is really easy. You just go to rotate, pick your object that you want to rotate, enter, you pick a base point, you pick a reference, and then my reference is going to be from my base point out to, as long as it's lined up, it doesn't matter. But so I line it up with this, and now this lines up with this. So if I needed it to line up with something else, like I needed it to line up with that intersection right there, I can do that. And it lines it up. So that's how you use the reference option and rotate. Now you can also do a rotate copy. So normally I do that one first. But so if you do a rotate copy, you can pick this guy, hit enter, let's do the geometric center, and then let's do a copy. So then I could do a copy, and let's say I did it 90 degrees, and I could actually make a copy of it like that. Not bad. Okay. So that's your rotate. Mirror command, that's one of my more favorite ones, because let's say that I needed this shape, but I needed a copy of it over here. Or it's the reverse of what I need. Well, if I click on mirror, I can pick my object, I can hit enter, and then I can pick, let's say if I wanted it over here somewhere, I can just pick a spot and pull straight down. Or if I wanted it to go up, I can go that way. Let's say I wanted to do this, and then do I want to erase my source object? Well, let's say no. I wanted to make a copy of it and mirror it over there. So I could draw half of an object and then mirror the other side. You might be tempted to do that on some of the drawings. It just depends on what you're doing. And it's okay if you do or you don't, but mirror command's really fun. Because let's say that, let's say this spline was the wrong direction, and I wanted to flip it to the other way, so I can click on mirror, and let me see, there's the geometric center of it, I guess. So I'll do that, and then I'll just pull it straight down, or I can pull it straight up, and it'll flip it, and then let's say I didn't want to keep my original object. I wanted to flip the object and keep the flip version. So then I would say, yes, you can erase the source issue object. Next step. Okay. So that's mirror. And looks like we've only got 4 more to go. So I already did scale. Oh, 3 more to go. Okay, so it showed you scale. Array is one that it's one of those that you can use. I don't use it very often. I use it more for making a pattern of circles than anything else. Just say that. So if you needed to make a whole bunch of columns, let's say you had a circle, and so you have a column right there, a post, and you need to post X amount this way and X amount this way. So what you do is you click on Array, Rectangular Array, you pick your object that you want to array, enter, and then it pulls you into this here. It says you've got 4 columns, you got 3 rows. So let's say I needed 10 columns, and I needed 6 rows. Okay, well now it's telling me that I've got 110 between them. And I believe that's from the center, looks like. So if I were to go, okay, well maybe I want to have 150 between them this way. And the vertical way, I want to have 150. So now they're 150 each way apart. The other thing with an array is, do you want to keep them hooked together? When you do an array like this, typically you want to leave it as an associative, which means that you could go back and change it. Typically, you don't have to do anything else to it, so you leave this as associative, and so then when you click on Close Array, I killed it. Oh no.
It basically had a crash.
Yep, you can say Mr. Doty killed it. don't know what I did. Now, usually when something like that happens, that means that I need to put a patch on it, probably, or put a service pack on it. Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, well, let's see. Where were we? Up and here. Let me just pull this guy up. Okay. Model space. Following shortcuts are invalid. Don't care. Okay. So array. So okay. Well, here I can show you an array real quick. So if you do a polar array, it means you go in a circle. So let's say that I picked, I don't know, these two views, and I hit enter, and then it says pick the center point. Well, I'm going to pick this corner right here. And then it rotates these things around, and how many do you have? I've got 6, 60-degree angle, and it goes around in a circle. Well, if I hit close array, and then I go back and click on it, what I was trying to show you was if it's associative, then you can go back and edit it. And then, you click on it, and then you can change it and say that you wanted 7. And it'll add 7 and put 7 in there. Or, I needed 5. And then I could close it out, and it would be okay. All right? So the difference with that is if I have a line here, okay, I got a line, and if I wanted to array it around, let's say we'll do a polar array, pick on it, enter, we'll do the middle of it like that, and I turn associative off, and then I hit close array. Now, each one of these is an individual line. So that's the difference between have it as associative or not associative. If you do a polar array, 99 times out of 100, you need to turn it off of associative. Well, I won't say 99%. Well, a lot of times you do, unless it's just circles. Like if it's just holes on a bolt circle, then yeah, leave them associative. But if you've got something that you have to edit later, like you need to trim on it or something, then you're going to have to explode it to get it to work, because a fillet may not work on it or a chamfer may not work on it. It may trim up, but then you can't fillet it. So it can mess things up. That's why I usually tell people to turn the associative off whenever you're doing a polar one. Like I said, unless it's just holes. That would be nice to keep, because if you need to change the amount of holes, then you want to leave it that way. All right, now last thing. Actually, second to last thing. So when you draw a rectangle, right? Rectangle is a polygon. It's all hooked together. Okay, well, what if you want to make another rectangle inside of that, a specific distance? I can do that. So let's say I wanted it on the outside of it. So I can use what we call the offset command. And then let's say I wanted it to come out this distance, whatever this distance is. Now you can type in a distance, which I typically do. But you pick your object, and you go either outside or inside, and you pick. And then you can keep doing that forever if you want, or you can even pick a different distance. You could type in 0.6, since that one was 0.32, and you could go a different distance. Now this is using the offset command. All right, I'm going to hit enter to finish out. What if I didn't want to do the whole thing? How can I do that without drawing an extra line? Well, what you can do is you can use the explode key or command. Click on explode, click on this guy, hit enter. Now he's not all connected. So if I wanted to offset, and I guess I'll pick my distance here again, or let's say it was 0.32. We'll say 0.32. And then I can pick my line and just go up that one line to 0.32. So that's where you can use explode to blow up something. And they used to have a piece of dynamite as a picture, which I thought was really cool. But anyway, so that's offset, making the ones go multiples, distances parallel with each other. And then explode will take things that are hooked together and blow them apart so that you can separate them and do something else with them. Okay, now, there's a couple other ones on here that I usually try to go over, and then I want to do text, and then that's it. So I know it makes for a long video and it makes for a long class, but basically, here's what we're going to do. On modify, we're going to do lengthen for one. So let's say you need to have something that is a specific distance. So select object to measure. So I'm going to pick that guy. And I don't know why it's got selection on here, so we're going to pick line. And then, so usually what I do is I use total because I'm usually looking for a total distance or length that I want it to be. So I pick on total, and let's say I want the length to be 16. All right, so I hit enter after I type in the 16, and then I pick the end that I want to adjust. Let's say I want to adjust that end of the line. So I pick that, and I don't know why. It's okay. I must have multiple lines. Either that or I got a glitch. And so now that one is 15. Let's say I want that one to be 15. And you know what? I'm going to delete this line and see what happens. So now, I must have two lines. All right, let's delete that guy. Delete that guy. All right, dude. Anyway, should only have one of each now. I don't know what I did wrong, but anyway. So basically, you can go into lengthen, LEN, pick an object that you want to adjust, and then you hit total. And let's say I want it to be 10. And let's say I wanted this side to be short, the short side. So there's that. So now this object is 10. So you want that object to be 10. That one to be 10. All right, so they're all 10. So that's lengthen or shorten if you want. Now the other one that's on here is the break command and join. Okay. Break. If you want to break something, you can pick, break, and then pick it, and then you can pick another point, and it'll make it'll break it off and cut out a section. Now you can also break it at a point, which means I can pick this line, and then it says specify break point. Well, I want this intersection right here. So now I've got this piece and I've got this piece. You can also do it manually by doing break, picking your object, and then instead of getting rid of part of it, I can hit F for first point, and then I can pick that point twice, and now I have two separate pieces. So there's two ways you can do it. There's a break in one spot command, and then there's the break command, and you can still break it in one spot if you want to. All right, so that's about all of them on there. Join. So then how do you put these back together? You can use a join command. So you click on join, you pick your two objects that you want to hook back together, you hit enter, and now they are one piece. So you can break things, you can join things. All right. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about for today is the text command. There are two versions of the text command. The one that they use for the most part and the tutorial, which I was going to do today, but I'm not. I'm going to do it on Thursday, is the print tutorial. And in the print tutorial, they have you use just the regular text command. So here's the thing. There's a default text style that's not really set to anything whenever you start a drawing. So if you click on single line text and you pick a starting point, it's going to ask you how tall do you want the text. The default size is 0.2. Well, let's say you wanted it to be 3 tall, and then you hit enter, and then the rotation is always 99.9% of the time going to be 0, because I want it to be a horizontal text. So I just hit enter, and now I can type. So if I were to put down cap locks and type in my name, it's really big because I set it for 3. And then if I want to go to the next line, I can put, and then I can go to the next line and I can do that. And then if I was done, I hit enter twice. What if I wanted to do something different or change it to something else? How do you edit it? All you have to do is double click on it. And let's say I just wanted it to be him. And then I can hit enter. Now, what is the command that you type in? edit is what it is. But it's a lot easier to double click on it. So you can either do double D, edit, or you can double click on it and you can edit it. This is just regular text. The other kind of text is multi-line text. Now, what multi-line text, you make an actual text box. And then you can type in, oops, wrong button. Now I can just do, I can do this, and then I can hit close text editor, and then if I pick on it, I could grab this little grip and I could make it go to 3 lines like I did the other one, just by changing the grips. So this one is all together as one entity, whereas the other one is 3 different lines. Now what happens if you go back into regular text mode again? Well, it starts out saying, hey, do you want to start here? You could hit enter, and it'll start right below where you left off. And then you could put in whatever it is. And then today's date, 9/9/25. And then I picked accidentally down here. Well, if I hit backspace, it'd go back up there, and then I could hit enter to go back down. Or if I wanted to pick somewhere else, I could. And I could start typing in something else. I could click over here and type in something else. And then when I was done, I hit enter twice. Now, if you hit escape before you hit enter twice, you might lose everything you just typed, or part of it at least. So that's kind of important. Let's see. So what happens for this guy? If you edit it, you just double click on it. Now you'll notice up here you got things like justification. What if you want everything middle center? You can do that with the multi-line text. What if you wanted to change the font? Change the font. Right now it's set for Arial. You could go in and change it to something else. We could change it to Broadway. Oh wait, it didn't change. Why did it not change? Well, for you to be able to edit this and change any of this stuff up here under the formatting, you have to highlight it. So now that I highlight it, I can change it. I can change it to wherever that one was. Here, there's Country Blueprint. We'll do that one. And let's say that I didn't like that color, and instead of doing it by the layer, maybe I want to make it a different color. Maybe I wanted it to be green, even though it's on a different layer. All right, so now it's green and it's a different font and so on. I can't do that to a single line text. I actually have to go into a thing called style and mess with the text style. But we're not going to do that right now because we're going to learn about that later. All right, so I think this is all I want to go over for today. And I appreciate those that have hung around and bared with me. So basically we covered draw, we covered modify, we talked about text, and I crashed the computer, so that's pretty cool, I guess. It didn't want to let me do anything. So the moral of the story is Mr. Doty should have saved what he was doing, even though he didn't really care, but I should have saved what I was doing. So note to self, remember, every so often, even if you're on a roll talking about something or working on something, gotta remember to hit save. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna go over right now. So I'm gonna close out. I'm gonna turn off the record and everything and kind of go from there. And class is about over anyway. But I'll be here if you have questions. And on Thursday, I will go ahead and go over how to draw the other ones, how to start working on them. You probably, well, why don't you do that now? Well, I mean, I could. But if I do, I'll start it on a different video. But honestly, I've been doing this for a while, and I'm good. So anyway. You can look for some of the videos, and Mr. Anderson does things a little bit different sometimes, and that's okay. It's just different. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different, and that's okay. I may do it a little differently whenever I do it on here. We'll see. So I guess if you have questions, let me know. If not, I'm going to call it. And I'm not going to save changes to that because I don't care. And we'll send our report, let it do its thing. No solution has been found. Oh well, that's too bad.